In Ward-Junk Vimy Ridge, you see that Dave and I meet Valerie Bent Stewart in a town nearby Vimy Ridge. And she shows us amazing etchings by Canadian soldiers done nearly 100 years ago. She then takes us to the ruins of an old church, and we find more names etched into the walls. Now, what you don't see in the show is a third location, not far from Vimy. Here is an exclusive look at this extra scene.
Okay, so here we're in Vimy Ridge, a small village, and we're actually right outside the Collège Saint-François.
How far are we behind Vimy Ridge now?
About 10 kilometers. Really interesting about this wall is that you can see the impact of fighting between the French and the Germans in 1914 and 1915. And then in addition to that, you also have inscriptions such as this one from soldiers from all over the Commonwealth. See, Pretoria, South Africa. There's another one, Canadian, so 72nd or maybe 73rd Battalion.
There must have been at least 100 names of Canadian and other Commonwealth soldiers that came past there in 1915, 16, 17. What's this?
WR Hawes from the 46th Battalion.
And you wonder how many of those names that were etched on that wall are now etched either on the Vimy Memorial or on headstones in the cemeteries of the area. You got that one?
I just wanted to document as many names as possible.
The mission is to go in and research these names, to find out who these men were, where they were from, and what happened to them.
While at the school, they actually found 5 men who did die during World War I. It was interesting because there's a guy named Lalone. He died in 1918, near the end of the war. 2 of them, Radway and Morrison, they were killed in August 1917. Arthur Creighton and WR Hawes, who died on April 11th, 1917, both from the same battalion.
That's interesting. The fact that both of them were killed at Vimy, that's where we have to start.
If Dave and I and a research team can just find 1 or 2 families to bring here, that would be the ultimate way to end our Vimy Ridge experience. Now, Dave and I and our research team based in Toronto begin to research the names of the 5 soldiers we highlighted in the previous scene. It isn't long before we find a family from one of those soldiers, and we bring them over to France. Here's another exclusive scene from Ward-Junk Vimy Ridge. So this is your first time?
First time.
That's right. Greg Haas and Darlene Dickerson have come all the way from Western Canada, even though they know very little about their great uncle, Roy Haas.
Born in Ontario, he worked in family business and went off to war when he was 18.
We knew that he had an uncle that died at Vimy Ridge.
The big question for them was what were the circumstances surrounding his death on April 11th? And from our research, Wayne and I were pretty confident we had the answer. But before we could share that with them, we felt it was appropriate to take them back and have them walk in his footsteps in the final days of his life.
So you're intrigued where we're going?
I am, very much so.
Wayne and I decided it was best to start them in their journey by introducing them to Valerie.
I got it.
You got it? Yeah. From Canada, who came over here.
Valerie, nice to meet you.
In the town of Vimy Ridge, and this is actually a school. It's a private school, and during the First World War, the Canadians were actually here while they were preparing the attack on Vimy Ridge.
We showed them name after name of soldiers who stood there 100 years ago and etched their names. Like the walls are living history of Vimy. And then, just a few steps further, they saw what they were here for.
That we wanted to show you.
William Roy Haas.
He was here and stood here.
Very touching, very surreal.
Now we were able to reveal the first piece of key evidence to Darlene and Greg about their great uncle.
And they moved through here on April 7th to 8th.
Our research took us into the war diaries of the 46th Battalion and Roy Haas's own personal service record. The war diary clearly states that Haas's regiment moved from north of where that school is located through the area south of the school late on the 7th or early on the 8th, 1917. So William Roy Haas signed his name on that wall only 3 days before he died on Vimy Ridge.
His heart and his soul is part of France.
There's still one more stop we need to make.
The sun was setting. It was casting an incredible glow onto the Vimy Memorial, and we were the only ones there. Before we go up on the monument, we really wanted to kind of share some information that Dave and I uncovered about Roy. We're also kind of confused when we looked at the records on the fact that he died on the 11th and not the 12th.
Right.
Because frankly, there was no major action for this particular unit on the
It was a dead
11th,
date.
and that's what had us baffled. This is an order that was sent out late on the 10th at night for a patrol. From reading the war diary, we knew that this patrol had met heavy machine gun fire on at least 3 occasions.
But it was the only action that the 46th Battalion had on the 11th. So it just really seems that Roy was part of this patrol.
Somehow, Roy Hawes was either separated or hit or lost, but he never returned.
The body of Roy Hawes was never found, and his name is one of over 11,000 names etched into the memorial.
To have that story, to know that story means so much, and just to be able to pass that on to the rest of the family and the generations behind us, that we didn't appreciate everything that he did.
And he went through a lot for a 19-year-old.
What makes this story very special to me is that now the Hawes family have 2 places to visit when they come to Vimy Ridge. They can go to that old school wall where an exuberant 19-year-old etched his name into it. Then, they can go to the Vimy Memorial and see his name honored on one of the most iconic war monuments of World War I.